This is MichMash, a weekly conversation where we try to unjumble an important and sometimes under-the-radar statewide story that affects you. I'm Cheyna Roth.
And I'm Alethia Kasben.
Lawmakers are debating policies to help curb cell phone use by students during school time. Both the House and Senate are moving competing legislation, with the Senate passing a bill that would require school districts to enact plans to limit students' use of cell phones, but keeping open what each school might do.
And like you said, Cheyna, there is another proposal moving as well. In the House, a bill would require school districts to implement prohibitions on cell phones based on a student's grade. It is more prescriptive than the Senate proposal, which, as you said, does leave districts a lot of latitude. The House plan did see some changes this week, though, as it moved out of committee. Those changes brought the Department of Education to neutral, which in legislator speak is good. Neutral, sometimes getting a department from opposition to neutral is a positive, even though they're still not supportive. But to highlight, the competing nature of these plans, the Education Department does support the Senate proposal.
Changes made this week to the House bill would allow students to have basic phones that do not have access to internet and third-party applications, which is not something that a lot of students readily have. Most phones that students have right now are, smartphones. It would also prohibit elementary and middle school students from using their phones during instructional time, lunch, and recess. High school students would be prohibited from using cell phones during class time.
Yeah, I think the very basic cell phone idea is this exemption for parents who are like, the main concern here, right, is parents want students to be able to reach out to them in the event of probably a school shooting, but other safety issues.
Yes.
And that is where the Senate plan doesn't try to completely prohibit cell phones being on school property for students because of those key concerns from parents. So I think the House proposal is trying to address that by saying, hey, you got a phone where a kid can't be on Instagram all day, that one is just fine. And this is where, the rubber meets the road. Although the bills are bipartisan, the Senate is controlled by Democrats. And of course, they are pushing this plan that is less strict. And the plan in the House was introduced by a Republican. The Democrat is Senator Dana Polhinke, and the Republican is Representative Mark Tisdale.
And it's so interesting to see this dynamic playing out where it's not just the parties that we're used to seeing the parties facing off of each other, but this is also very much a House versus Senate situation. And the House addressed the key concern about its bill, which was the complete ban of cell phones on school grounds for some kids. They changed this to simply prohibit the use of devices during various times of the school day. The House bill, though, still outlines a key plan that schools must implement.
And of course, there are concerns with the Senate proposal as well. In the House, where they are pushing this more strict plan, they're saying, the schools could do what is outlined under the Senate bill right now. There's no need for a bill to require school or to ask schools to do this. It's not really changing anything. So people in the House are saying, will schools actually follow through under the Senate proposal?
Parents and school leaders feel cell phones have hindered students' academic performance and are negatively affecting their mental health. Governor Gretchen Whitmer has called for the legislation to act on this issue, and what the final versions of these bills look like and what she actually ends up signing, if anything, remains to be seen.
This is definitely an issue where there is broad agreement and then also a lot of disagreements. So we'll see if lawmakers can find common ground before the start of the school year. Thanks, Cheyna.
Thanks, Alethia. We're going to take a quick break here, but don't go away, because when we come back, we are going to be talking with Mike Cox, a Republican who recently announced his bid for governor. It's an interesting conversation. We're trying to speak with all of the major candidates ahead of the primaries. You won't want to miss it. Welcome back to MichMash. We are joined now by Mike Cox, former Attorney General and current Republican candidate for governor. Mike, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Cheyna, and thank you, Alethia. It's great being here on Gongwer.
So there, was some news this week. We're recording on Wednesday, so this happened today in the Republican primary with the announcement that Dan and Pamela DeVos are throwing their support and $5 million behind one of your opponents, Congressman John James. So you had some things to say about John James today on social media. I want to break that down. First, What are your thoughts on John James throwing his hat in the ring in this primary, kind of immediately being perceived as a favorite? You called him job jumping James today in your comments. Please explain.
Well, no one's told me anything I said was wrong. Running for 3 different offices in 5 years is job jumping. At the end of the day, he's free to run for whatever office he wants. But clearly, he begged Republicans and people in Macomb County to support him. They did. And he was telling them in October, November, I'm going to be your congressman. I'm running to help President Trump. And, then he jumps, right? And he did it after he'd already bought a house for $3 million in West Michigan. So those are just facts for voters to think about and analyze. And I was just airing out what people are saying to me every single day on the campaign trail here in Michigan.
Mm-hmm. And do you think, what do you make of sort of this, his favorite status, so to speak? I mean, he jumped into the race and I think there is this perception that, he kind of rose to the top here.
Well, he was always at the top because he's had $90 million spent on him over the past 6 years. So, I relish being the underdog. That's how I ran in 2002 when I beat Gary Peters. And we had Gary and I had the closest statewide race since at least World War II, closer than President Trump's. So I know how to win tight races, and I know how to come from behind. And that's what I intend on doing again.
In 2010, you had the support of Dick and Betsy DeVos.
Right.
Now, obviously, some other DeVos family members are throwing their support behind John James. Do you think that you will have, though, the Dick and Betsy DeVos sign off this time? Cheyna, rather, it's really that's a call for Dick and Betsy to make. They're very sophisticated. They've been around politics a long time. Of course, I would welcome that. I respect both of them as people who've taken chances. They've been out front. They've taken the slings and arrows of running for public office or being in the public eye. I view them both as leaders. And I think ultimately this race is going to come down to who can lead, who's run. So I was a very successful attorney general. After winning the closest statewide race, I went on to the first in 50 years for Republicans to win. I went on and I did, for instance, I reduced the headcount in the office by 20%. Every politician says, I'm going to do more with less. And it's generally BS, right? But I did. And I think the issues that are resonating today, doging state government, as Governor Whitmer's tried to grow the size of state government by 5,000 employees during the time she doesn't even make folks come into work, that resonates with voters. And that resonates with people who are looking for leadership. So to get back to your original question, I can't speak for Dick and Betsy. I have a great deal of respect for them. I think at the end of the day, they'll want to support someone who can best lead the state, who's been there before, like I have. And they also know one thing that I didn't have when I ran in 2010 is I built my own business. I as my wife Laura told me when I lost the primary to Governor Snyder, she said, the voters told you to go home and make some money for your family. And so that's what I did. I started off all by myself in a little office. I had to file my own stuff. I had to learn how to, and I grew that. Ultimately, at the highest peak, I had 18 employees. Last 3 years, I grew from 400,000 in revenues the first year to over 30 million annually over the past 3 years. So not only do I know how to run state government, but I know how to run an office where you have to take the risk of your own money. I think that's going to resonate. I hope it will resonate with Dick and Betsy, but I know it will resonate with the voters of Michigan as we come into 2026, and there's a real hunger for leadership and a change.
So speaking of that, you've announced that you've put $1 million behind your campaign so far. Are you planning to put more, of your own money behind your campaign?
What I'm planning to do is raise money from. I did that for a couple of reasons. So when you go out and you campaign for office, you're asking people to sacrifice some of their money. You're asking people to give you a vote. You're asking people to sacrifice some of your time. So I want to be really clear that I'm not only going to sacrifice my time, I'm going to sacrifice some of my money because I think it's so important. And thankfully, Michigan gave me the means to do that. My parents are immigrants, legal immigrants. They came here because Michigan, they didn't know each other, but they both came before they got here, but they both came here. They came to Detroit because Michigan was the best place to be in the country. Think about that. Who says that now? And in the course of a lifetime, my parents are both still alive. We've gone from being the best to now where our fourth graders, are scoring so low in math and reading that in reading only 2 states, Alaska and Nebraska and New Mexico, scored lower. And we now again have the second highest unemployment rate in the country. So we need to do things that change this state around. So if that requires me showing people I'm going to sacrifice both my time and money, that's what I did.
How important of a figure do you think President Donald Trump is in this primary? In your social media comments this week, you had some criticism for John James and his relationship to Trump, something the congressman often boasts as being positive. Right. You note that you voted for Trump 3 times. Your wife, former Michigan GOP chair, and Senator Laura Cox actually worked for Trump. Besides the Republican primary, it feels like there's a sort of secondary contest to show who supports the president the most. Would you agree with that?
I would agree that the president oftentimes takes interest in primaries. And where he does, oftentimes he's successful. And the reality is, President Trump is going to make United States, America great again. And, and quite frankly, we're purposely looking to make Michigan great again. I want it to be the place it was when my parents came here. It's funny. My mom is from Ireland. I was just there last fall, and Trump has a golf course by where my mom's from. And everyone loves him there because he creates jobs in a very remote and poor area. And I intend to create jobs. So, but Cheyna, getting back to your question, I don't know. We'll wait and see. In 2022, the president waited to, I think, 4 days before the primary to endorse. I have no idea what he's going to do. He's the president. I'm going to respect what he does. But the bottom line is, I'm campaigning all the way through to the first Wednesday of November of 2026.
So I want to get into a bit of your background for listeners who may not be familiar with you. So you're a former attorney general. Right. You ran for governor in 2010, and like you mentioned, didn't make it out of the primary that year. What have you been up to since then?
Well, since then, like I said, I started my own business. I'd never been in the private sector. So I went from being a 19-year-old Marine Corps corporal, enlisted in the Marines out of high school, made me into the man I am today, whether that's good or bad. But it made me into the man I am today. And I then went to the Wayne County Prosecutor's Office. I did 13 years there. I ran all the homicide prosecutions there. I'm a longtime homicide prosecutor. That kind of steeled me, quite frankly, for running for office and actually running the AG's office. And since then, I've kind of used that same mentality that I got from immigrant parents in the Marine Corps to just battle for, move forward. And so, like I said, I started my own business. To answer your question, I started my own business. Like I said, I went from $400,000 my first year in business to over $30 million a year now in about 12 years. It was fun. It was a lot of anxiety at first because I'd never been in the private sector before. And it really, I think, rounded out who I am as a person and as a candidate. Because when I ran before, I had a number of people who were with me, supporters of mine, especially in the donor community, who were supporters of mine, and said, Mike, we like what you do, but we know that the changes you made, you increase the impact of the office, and you're doing it with fewer people, but you've never done it with your own money. Well, now I can tell them I've done it with my own money. And I'll tell you, it's scary. So, for instance, in the U of M case, where my partner and I and the group of us represented over 1,078 folks who were sexually abused by Dr. Anderson, I had $1.2 million in at one point, and I still had a payroll. And I remember I was paying the 15th and the 30th. And I remember like 3 days out, I have $6,000 in my bank, and I got to make payroll of 77,000 change. And it's like, where am I going to get that? So I've gone through that anxiety and had my back against the wall, fought my way out of it, and kept my business alive and employed folks. And so I share that with small businessmen and women across Michigan now.
You've been out of the scene for a bit now in terms of seeking elected office. Why are you running for governor again? And more specifically, why now?
Okay. A couple of reasons. The same issues have arisen that arose in 2009 and 10 when I ran, which is jobs leaving the state, people leaving the state, young people. 3 of my 4 children are out of state, and population loss, education failure. I already cited the statistics. You know, there's a football saying that coaches use, you are what your record says you are. And we're failing. This isn't the state my parents came to. And that's really it, Cheyna. It's like, I've done well financially. I could retire, but I want to do more for this state that was so good to my family. I mean, I grew up in a neighborhood where everyone was working class, so auto workers. I remember Mr. Byland had delivered a paper to him by 5:35 a.m., the Free Press, because he had to be on the road by 5:40 to go work at Rouge Foundry. But he tipped me pretty nice for doing that. But that was the people I grew up with. But everyone in my neighborhood, every parent believed that their kid could do better than they were. And unfortunately, too many parents in Michigan right now don't believe that and don't think that. And we have to change that. And the shame is the Michigan that I grew up in, that my parents came to, has fallen behind so many other states. My granddaughters in Mississippi, you guys are younger than me, but it was certainly the case when I grew up, but probably when you grew up, that no one wanted to have the idea of being educated in Mississippi. Now my granddaughters in Hernando, Mississippi, go to schools that perform better than the schools in my neighborhood in Livonia, Michigan. That's a civil wrong. That's immoral, and that's absolutely wrong to our children and to the residents of our state. So that's really what it boils down to.
So you are, there are 5 Republicans in this primary right now, and some more are still talking about getting in. You know, that's pretty crowded, and it's not even 2026 yet. How are you going to stand out?
By talking about the things we're talking about here. So if folks go to my website, and I please encourage you to do that, MikeCox2026.com, what you're going to see is over 40 pages, I think it's 50 pages of identification of things we need to fix and how we do it. Primarily, I'm the only one advocating eliminating the income tax. Why am I doing that, Alethia? Because the 10 most prosperous, fastest growing states don't have an income tax. If 10 other states can do it, damn it, Michigan can too. And I want to reenact the right to work. Those 2 ideas will invigorate our economy, will make us look more attractive. Think of it like I was walking down Washington, or you're walking by a storefront, and what looks attractive. You know, retailers always about making the storefront look attractive. Right now, our storefront doesn't look very attractive, where we're trying to buy jobs, but letting job creators who are growing jobs, providing them no tax relief, where everything's a matter of, are you politically connected? Are you part of the corporate political institution? So I want to restore right to work. I want to eliminate the income tax. We need a Doge state, Michigan state government. As I talked about earlier, I've done it, and we need to do it. Part of that is bringing state workers back to work and getting some more traffic out on the street here for Lansing. But more importantly, having them more effective as they collaborate and they act collegially together. I just have this firm belief that we ought to find public servants in public places, right? And that public servants shouldn't live better or have a better work condition than 90% of Michiganders. That's the third thing. Number 4, I want to get rid. Let's focus on the ABCs, not DEI. DEI, I believe, I've been around for 55 plus years. It's divisive. When I was in the Marine Corps, we didn't have DEI. We had merit, and it was an integrated workforce. When I got to U of M, affirmative action helped create splinters, and it still does today. And it certainly does in our society. We need to get rid of it. And the most important thing, as I mentioned, is we have to revolutionize Michigan government. How do we do that? Well, we have universal school choice. We grade. That's really about giving parents and students the opportunity to know what's best for them, where to best go. And that traditional public schools are great. We need to strengthen them. We need to give choice for those who want charter schools, and we need in homeschooling. And part of that, let's grade schools so parents know and make intelligent choices. And let's look at other things other states are doing to move. I mean, we need to adopt what Mississippi is doing. They have what's called the science of reading, and getting every teacher from kindergarten to fourth grade on the same page and teaching reading. As you both probably know, kids first learn to read, and then they read to learn. And the scores show us that our kids aren't getting that. And we owe it to them. They're as bright as anyone else is. So that's the fifth plank. It's really the most important plank, along with invigorating and changing our economy. So you asked, how's that going to make me stand out? I'm not afraid to be a conservative. I'm not afraid to run to win. And here's the reality. There's no one in this race. There's no one going to get in the race. I don't know who they may be, who's actually beat Democrats twice statewide. And that's the point of politics. If you want your ideas to succeed, you should go with someone who's won statewide twice and someone who's done it while being outspent. No one, whether they're a favorite now or whether they can come in later on in the race, can claim that. I can. No one else can.
Mike Cox, thank you so much for joining us today on MichMash.
Well, thanks for having me. Hope you have me back.